Yes. So now this is another interesting take. Well, let's get into this and then I'll talk a little bit about it.
So what are your thoughts on multiculturalism?
I like it in moderation. We kind of got a good thing going now, but I don't like the idea that there's going to be no monoculture. There's like no center. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, America's good if it's like America with some other stuff, with some spices and ingredients. But if it's like there's no America and it's all diversity, then it's like, okay, well, what even is this now?
You want to keep it as a minority?
Yeah.
I can see that point. Or else it loses its cultural essence, it loses its core, and it has to maintain its core. That makes sense.
This is a good Caesar salad.
Oh. Oh.
Okay, so while they're busy talking about Caesar salads and such, so the point of this video, yes, of course, multiculturalism is a thing, and I would, in the grand scheme of things, I suppose I would take Nick Fuentes aside in this regard. I think it is important to have your own culture. Multiculturalism is, in my opinion, a failure. I come from South Africa, so I've got first-hand experience, or what do people call it, lived experience about the failures of multiculturalism. But my point in this video is, so you've got these influences. Sneeko, for instance, part of the Red Pill manosphere movement. Let's move it to a clip where we can see their faces and not their decadent food that they are eating. So we've got Sneeko over there, and then you've got Nick Fuentes, obviously. I've noticed this trend in the manosphere, the Red Pill movement. Characters like Sneeko, Andrew Tate, Myron Gaines from Fresh and Fit, for instance, openly Muslim. Now, the thing is, whether that's good or bad, that's up to you to decide. The thing is, you've got these characters in the manosphere, in the Red Pill movement, who are, and I understand the logic behind it, Islam is a very, I suppose, masculine religion. I suppose when you look at it and you delve a bit deeper, you'll find skeletons in the closet, but let's rather not go there. So it's a masculine religion. I suppose it's a lot more masculine than, let's say, the socialist, liberal, wokey kind of. It's not a religion, but it is a political thing, and to me, they do have their own doctrines. The Human Manifestos, for instance, there's 3 of them. All of the atheists/humanists would agree with those as almost a dogma, really, or otherwise you're excommunicated and kicked out the club because you are starting to look at things too objective, I suppose. But regardless, these characters are attempting to push male values, attempting to portray some kind of manly work ethic. I don't really listen to a lot of their stuff. But, it's a very manly kind of approach. It's a bit, weirdly, it's a bit secular from what I've seen. It's a bit materialistic. It's actually quite a lot materialistic. Chasing money, chasing cars, treating women like crap, these kind of things. I understand, because obviously a lot of men are frustrated with women these days. That is, of course, no excuse. I'm also not saying that we should be doormats either. But you've got this concept of, in the West, I'll leave political colors because I know it's different in terms of Europe and in terms of the UK, but you've got the socialists, the liberals, the communists, they are on one side of the spectrum. Then you've always had the conservatives, the Republicans, on the other side, the Democrats as well. Let's put it in the American context. And then, of course, you've also got on the other side, the conservatives, the Republicans, people who look at truth objectively and use logic and reason, I suppose, as opposed to the others which use emotion. That's kind of how the spectrum has always been. However, because of Muslim, let's say, infiltration, there has been almost a little bit of an infection in the manosphere, because Islam is politically colored as green. You cannot simply have, because now we have to factor in Islam into, unfortunately, the equation in Western politics, because, of course, Islam is also political. They push for Sharia law. So you've got, let's stick to the American context to keep it simple. I think a lot of people understand the colors. So you've got the blues representing liberals, Democrats, so on. You've got the reds represented by the conservatives, the Republicans. Then you've got the greens, which I think should be factored in as well. So the manosphere has been infiltrated by Islam. And because of its obviously manly, quote unquote, manly approach to life, a lot of men tend to find it appealing. But we have to consider, if you look at history, for instance, you'll find a similar idea in the medieval crusading times, where the Ottomans went out and invaded Christian lands. They took Christian boys captive. That speaks of the ideology. They indoctrinated them. And unfortunately, these Christian boys became Ottoman janissaries. An Ottoman janissary was a great warrior, a great fighter for Islam. So you've got these Christians that got taken from their homes. They became Ottoman janissaries and they converted to Islam. And then they ended up fighting for Islam and, shall we say, did terrible things to Christians who they formerly were. And so we have to add all these three things into the mix. And my point being is, in the Christian in the general red pill movement, you have these characters, Sneeko, Andrew Tate, Fresh and Fit, those kinds of characters, that I'll ask Rock about this. You can find it out for yourself as well. You can also go ahead and do the research. They are starting to push an idea of, on their platforms, let's shy away from this whole idea of liberal versus conservative. We need to push for something else, something different, something new. My concern is, and history's kind of proven me right, that they're attempting to push for, once again, Sharia law. Anybody who's looked at the news and sort of knows about these things will agree with me that Sharia law is what Muslims want, and it's dictatorial. Historically, it's terrible. Muslims have always been about world domination, and so on. This is why I think we need to look at the situation a bit more with nuance and understand that there's another political, albeit religious, player that's entered the mix. And we need to consider the fact that, it's no more left and right anymore. And technically it never really was. It's sort of always been a battle between good and evil. I know it's a contentious take. That's fine. I understand. But for the sake of addressing the young men out there, it's definitely, I understand the frustration that the left has brought. I understand the frustration that being effeminized for so long, being cudgeled, being put down by these woke people and told that, you know, we are scum and you're toxic masculinity and all of these things that drives you into the manosphere, drives you into the red pill, which is a good thing. However, Islam isn't the answer. It never has been the answer. It's always been the opposite of what Christianity is. And no matter what people say, the God of Islam and the God of Christianity is not the same.
And is America a white country?
No, I mean, not anymore.
60% still.
Yeah, but it's obviously changing.
I looked at the stats recently. It's pretty crazy how drastically it shifted. When I was born, I think it was almost 80% in 98. 27 years later, it's 60%, 20% decline in my lifetime. That's a demographic change you can see as you grow up.
It's noticeable.
But from the 20s until the 70s, it was pretty much the same. Almost exactly the same amount of whites.
Yeah, it's now a multiracial country. That's just the demographics.
Should America be a white country?
I mean, yeah, that's what it was founded as. So I think that if it ceases to be European, it's no longer what it is. You know, it'd be like taking the Russians out of Russia.
Well, I suppose you could go ahead and ask a person from Iraq or Iran the same question, I suppose. And I wonder what their answer would be is, should Iraq or Iran be an Arab country? I wonder what they would have to say.
Or the Chinese out of China. Now, I say that as an Italian, Irish, Mexican. My people weren't here at the time of the founding, but if those people aren't there, is it America? If it's all Italians making pizza and Mexicans making tacos and Irish doing their thing, it's something else.
But isn't that natural to what America, if America is the place of liberty, freedom, the pursuit of happiness, you know, Statue of Liberty, immigration, new opportunity, isn't it inevitable that it becomes the multiracial country it is now?
No, I mean, if you look at the history of how that happened, it was never inevitable. It was basically in 1965, because of the civil rights era, they said it's racist to set national origins quotas and say we're only going to have, you know, this many immigrants from Europe and this many from China and this many from wherever. And so they got rid of the quotas. And then
As far as I understand, it's the quotas in terms of historically when it came to immigrants coming over to the US and also going to the UK. There was kind of this understanding that it was easier to assimilate people of the same kind of culture. For instance, if a person from the UK wanted to go over to America, it made sense from a immigration point of view that that kind of person would probably fit in well because they had the same kind of culture. Now, unfortunately, it's come down to, because for the sake of the great multiculturalism push, it is regardless of what culture you are, all are welcome. And it's not necessarily that all are not welcome. It's just the idea of there has to be this idea of, are you willing to assimilate? What would the point be of you coming to one country while leaving another country, geographically speaking, but in your mindset, in your worldview, you had no desire to assimilate. You still wanted to bring your culture with you, your ideology with you. If your country was rubbish and you were fleeing it, but you've still got that cultural understanding, in a sense, you're basically saying, I want my new country to be turned into the country that I've just left. I think that is an issue.
The immigration became extremely diverse. And then in 1990, they basically doubled the amount of immigrants. So now we're getting very diverse immigrants and way more of them. And it was deliberate. I mean, it was lobbied for by immigrant groups and the Chamber of Commerce, the business interests, because they wanted the labor. First, they wanted the farm labor, and then they wanted the tech labor.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. Yeah, well, I think that's pretty much done with that. But yeah, that's the whole thing. I understand it's a big push. And, on paper, it would, be deemed as such a clever idea from, the Democrats. And obviously, they're also pushing this in the UK. It's because white people are having so few babies and the West is in a cultural decline. Or, they just are not having babies. The smart thing to do would be, okay, well, let's import immigrants to make up the shortfall, because there's now vacancies in jobs and those jobs need to get filled. And because white people aren't having children, once again, the jobs need to get filled by somebody else. The economy is going to tank. The thing is, this is why I said there's going to be a problem, because they don't share your ideology. They don't share the worldview. They don't share the Western civilizational worldview. A lot of these people that are coming from these different cultures, they want to impose their culture onto the Western civilization. And so the people that adhere to subjective truth, subjective thought, moral relativism would look at it as a simple math equation. There's job vacancies, they need to be filled. Let's import people to fill those jobs. They're not taking into account the rest of the world didn't go through the Enlightenment. The rest of the world didn't become, shall I say, for lack of a better word, soft. And so because they didn't become soft, they're still held on to their doctrines, their religions, their way of looking at the world. And the way the majority of the world outside of the West looks at the world is very nationalistic. They want to impose their nationality, their ideology, their culture on every place that they are in. And so you might see as a job needs a body, let's import that body to fill that job. They look at it as, this is an opportunity for me to impose my culture by taking over this culture that I'm going to, because they've opened the door. That means I'm allowed to impose my culture now. And I think it is very narrow-minded. And unfortunately, medieval Christianity fought against it. But we have given up.